about while we were gone, while we couldn't hear, was the fishbone diagram. Officially, this is known as an Ishikawa diagram. It was named after the Japanese professor Huru Ishikawa. And this was developed in the 60s, but with just like the 5 whys earlier, the first step to this process is to name a facilitator and create a team to brainstorm the causes. Where this differs really is the way the ideas are reported. I mean, one look at how they're written down and it becomes apparent why the name fishbone is stuck. So the facilitator would note the event of the problem as the fish head. Again, for this exercise, it's a failed calibration program. Then the team brainstorms ideas of the causes that may have contributed to the problem. These are the major categories you see here. I have processes and people and products. These can really be anything the team wants, but as a facilitator, if you see the team is struggling to come up with ideas, these generic ones I have listed here are pretty universally accepted, so they can absolutely be duplicated for your effort. The branches coming off of these major categories, though, should be the brainstorming ideas of the team that relate to that category. You'll note here that some of them, such as no calibration standards, in my example, is seen in multiple areas. That's perfectly fine. As a facilitator, it's very important to let the team know that there is no wrong answer. And everything is being recorded as they are said. There are no silly ideas. Just like with the 5 whys, the facilitator should be asking, why does this happen? With each of the branches, this will help you dig as deep as possible. So once the team has exhausted their ideas, the small branches, the team then focuses their attention to where the most impact can be felt. It's very easy to just see how many different potential causes this tool has identified, which shows just how important it is for an effective follow-up to make sure the first attempt at a correction will prevent future issues. I mean, the team decides to start with providing calibration standards as a first step, for example. The follow-up may reveal that the problem is still out there, and it will need to be revisited at other causes before they truly can prevent reoccurrences. So a few things to remember when you're brainstorming. There really is no idea that should be dismissed as being too silly. The process is going to identify several causes. Usually the first cause identified is not going to be the actual root cause. And the team chooses which of these causes to investigate further and then implement a change. And the recurring thing we're already seeing today is effective follow-up is essential.
What do you miss a couple days before I send you back to school? Really?
No, it's actually just
discussed today.
A pre-planned thing before I was even off.
The AD method, also known as the
just
AD
worked out that
disciplines,
I'm
first
back.
started appearing in the 1980s
What is it?
with Ford as a team-oriented
I
problem-solving
don't know. It's all outlined in this thing.
Even
Quality
though the
Con.
approach has been around for decades
There's new
now,
books coming
a
out.
lot
They're
of companies
highlighting.
still
They're going
struggle
over
with
what
ineffective
changed and
problem-solving
I mean, your skills.
and
Yeah.
use of corrective action. Hopefully,
getting to know the
we
new
can help
book.
that.
Right.
The steps to an AD report really are pretty easily identified on this model. I mean, right away you see the term team formation. Again, this will start with the facilitator to help form the team. He or she would then move down the list of Ds, ultimately arriving at a cause or causes that were identified and acted upon. Then after implementation of corrections and follow-up, again, the results are reported to executive management.
Thank you.
A few of the things that look a little different in this model, you'll see number 3, interim containment action. This takes us back to the glossary when we talked about corrective measure. This is the immediate correction to contain the nonconformity. Then the team can begin one of the root cause analysis tools we talked about to help identify a root cause to attack. Another thing that looks a little different on this model is the final D, recognize the team. while this is not explicitly spelled out in the other process we talked about, it really is a good idea. As you probably have gotten an idea by now, a good, well thought out root cause analysis is a pretty big deal. And the team has put a lot of work. Even recognize can go a long way. Little recognition can go a long way. So it seems like I'm having some more sound issues. So I'm going to try a different method to get this thing out here. Bear with me for a little.
And then the sound keeps going off on this guy.
We're working on fixing this one. Hold on just a second. Okay, this makes it a little better. Can you guys hear me now? Is there still no sound? You guys can hear me at all?
Yes, I think we're good with the sound.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. So again, I'm not sure where we lost sound. So I'm going to back up to the most recent one, an 8B announcement. If this is a repeat, I apologize, but maybe it will help guys in time. If you want me to go back further, you guys can send a question and let me know. We can definitely touch on something that you missed. Maybe the correct the question and answer period if you like. But an 8B report, as you see here, is pretty self-explanatory. Right away, you'll see that, again, it starts with the forming the team, just like everything else, all the other tools we talked about. Then you go right down the list. Ultimately, you're going to arrive at the root cause that need to be acted upon. It's also going to need to be followed up just like the other tools we talked about. A few things that look a little different. Number 3 there is interim containment action. That takes us back to the original glossary we talked about earlier today, where that is the corrective measure that's taken to fix the immediate issue of non-containment. Of course, then you can establish some root cause analysis tools to identify the root cause to attack. One thing I want to touch base on that's a little bit different on this model is you definitely have a firm step to recognize the team. And while this is not explicitly spelled out on the other process, it's a really good idea. As you've probably gotten the idea by now, a good, well thought out root cause analysis is a pretty big deal. And the team has put in a lot of work to get there. Even a little recognition can often go a long way. So here we have a Venn diagram that's going to show some of the things that all these tools have in common. It should be obvious by now that all effective root cause analysis will have a team approach rather than a single person answering. In all cases, the issue or the problem is clearly identified right away. In each of these, the root cause analysis identifies the root cause and causes. In all these processes, a corrective action is implemented to correct the issues. And finally, the results of these actions must be monitored and followed up on to verify the effectiveness. So as you may have seen in the description of the session, another way of looking at root cause analysis is to think of it in terms of a crime investigation. Because ultimately it is an investigation to get to the true culprit. And just like you see on TV, several witnesses and suspects will likely need to be interviewed before it becomes apparent which cause needs to be arrested to prevent any future crimes. Another way of approaching root cause analysis that has helped a lot of different companies over the years is looking at it in terms of the scientific process. If you remember your middle school science project, this would be the same model, and it can work well. With the observation question noted here being the problem with non-conformance. The research is using a root cause analysis tool to arrive at a hypothesis of what the root cause truly is. Test on this model is addressing the root cause by experimenting with corrections. Follow up these tests with solid review of the data, and finally report your report to executive management. So, hopefully, you can see there are a number of different ways to approach the process of getting to the root cause of an issue. So as we wind down, circle back to a few key takeaways from all those different processes. Root cause analysis should not be taken lightly. Ideally, it's a formal, relatively extensive process involving multiple personnel. No matter which tool you use, root cause analysis is just the beginning of the problem-solving process. And once you know the cause, the next step, and in my opinion, probably the most important, is implementing a solution and conducting regular checks to ensure that you're holding the game and it really was as effective as you thought it would be. So I know, again, there was a lot of some sound issues today. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and we'll get that taken care of. Dennis, if you can hear me, I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you, David. And yes, it might have been even some sound issues on my side as well, so my apologies. Thank you again, David. We do indeed have a couple of questions here, one maybe a comment. But before we do that, we're going to have an interactive polling question. Everyone should see the polling question. Please participate by clicking the answer you believe to be correct. Give you a moment to get your answers in. Now I will close the poll. Which of the following best describes an effective root cause analysis? A, the 5 whys, the most effective root cause analysis tool. Is that correct, David?
Okay, so let me, I was reading other questions, I apologize now. Which one describes an effective root cause analysis? Well, the answer is really follow-up is essential for all root cause analysis. The 5 whys can be an effective tool by all means, but as most people have said here, 66% said follow-up is essential, and it really is true. Depending on which process you use, you need to follow up what the team thought was the issue.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Were there any other questions?
Yes, we have some questions, David. Thank you for the audience, everybody. That's 100%. That's pretty good. Good education there, David. All right, so here's a question that we have. First question. We often get stuck on human error as the root cause. Realizing this is generally not a good root cause, do you have some advice or insight into how to move past or through this?
Yeah, that's a good question because I do see that quite a bit. We see human error, we see the answer is training, but really, I'm kind of a broken record here, but follow-up is key. So human error, it may very well be one of the root causes. And what you choose to do that maybe it was training that you used to address human error, but you want to follow up and see if that training was effective, and if that, in this case, human error prevented the problem. And I know that there are a lot of sound issues today, but what you should have hopefully was driven home too was all these tools typically are going to identify more than one root cause. So just because if you do a 5 whys, for example, and one time and the root cause, the 5th why is human error. If you do it again, and if you do it again with a good, effective team approach, you're likely going to get to other causes that will need to be addressed to truly be its most effective.
All right, thank you, David. We have a couple more questions here. A very simple one, I believe, for you. Can you explain what the D stands for in 8D?
It just stands for the word discipline. I mean, that just means a different type of a method. Let's see if I can push us back to that slide there. Again, that just stands for the word discipline.
Okay. Thank you, David. On to another question. Should the team always include the same personnel? We are a small business, so a pre-established team is difficult or seems unrealistic. We have a lot of overlap in duties in our office. What do you suggest when assembling a group or team to address the root cause of a nonconformance?
It's a great question. And one thing I love about that question is whoever asked it seems like they recognize the value of a team rather than just one person answering a corrective action request. So in my opinion, it does need to be a team, and the most effective ones come from throughout the company. So you may have someone from management, you may have a quality personnel. Ideally, you have somebody from the shop floor even, because all these guys give a different perspective into the problem and also have different ideas for corrections. If you're a small company, having a pre-established team may very well be the best way, because at that time you can call the team together and say, next week, Tiger team, be ready to go, and they can be prepared. Whereas if you try to do it short term, it can be hard to find somebody who's not, quote unquote, too busy.
All right, very good, David. Since you're on such a roll, I've got another question here for you. What is the best way to do a follow-up, a form, for example?
Well, a form is a great way of doing it. Ideally, most corrective action forms that you see out there have an area on the bottom of or page 2 or something of that nature that identifies a follow-up. So really a corrective action request or corrective action shouldn't be considered complete until that follow-up is done. A lot of companies will establish a 2 or 3 week time frame that they're going to go back and revisit the action. This is what we put into place. Has it been done yet? And did it truly fix the problem from reoccurring like we thought it would? You're going to find out that a lot of times it wasn't quite as effective as you had hoped, so it may need to be tweaked a little bit. So 2-3 weeks is kind of the standard for a follow-up, but that would help close the corrective action. Usually it's on the form. But also, it's a good idea to not totally get away from it. If your company has a good, effective quality management system, especially if they're a certified fabricator and director within the AIC program, once a year you're going to be doing a management review. It's a great time to relook at those corrective actions and see, even though it was 6, 7, 8 months ago, has it really been as effective as we thought it would be?
Okay, very good, David. One last question, and it's similar to another question that was asked earlier, but you might be able to add a little insight to this. It says, who is typical for team members for a small company, 10 or smaller?
Well, again, as far as typical goes, this is your program, it's your corrective action process, so you can decide who you want. In my opinion, it's a great idea to have a cross-section within the company. So not just all quality guys, not just the principal, the president, but from all areas of the company works best.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, David. That's all the time that we have for today's questions. One final announcement. Great things happen when students and their educators can be creative and pursue their interests. That's why the AISC Education Foundation is launching a variety of new exciting programs in 2021 and 2022, all designed to help the next generation of industry leaders and those who teach them. We can't make it happen alone. To learn more about these new programs and contribute to the AISC